Travel back with me to the early 1990s. Baby boomers have realized that the baseball cards they collected when they were kids, and their parents threw away when they grew up, were now rare, and in some cases very valuable. This, just like with comic books, led to a bubble of people buying up new baseball cards and stashing them away in mint condition in the hopes that they would pay for their kids' college education someday. The card companies were happy to indulge, printing tens of billions of cards each year, which of course led there to being no rarity and no value for these new cards. By the end of the 1994 Major League Baseball strike, the bubble had popped and the hobby receded for another 25 years. So what better time for the Postal Service to jump on the baseball card craze to promote stamps to a younger generation than 1996? These are Stampers Saver cards. Baseball card collecting wasn't the only hobby to have a peak in the early 90s. The American Philatelic Society, the biggest stamp collecting organization in the country, and the world actually, had its largest membership in the year 1990, and there's been a steady decline since the late 90s. Today, the membership numbers are less than half the peak 30 years ago. But even in the mid-90s, there was clear evidence that the hobby was missing the new generation. Even though total membership was peaking, the height of new membership in the APS occurred in the late 1970s. The Postal Service itself stated in a press release that in 1952, 2.5 million kids were collecting stamps, but by 1994, that number was down to 150,000. That's 1/16 the audience from 40 years earlier. So one approach they started taking was adopting less serious stamp designs and to start embracing pop culture. Not that they were completely opposed to it before the 90s. The performing arts series of the 70s and 80s had people like Will Rogers and W.C. Fields. They would have been considered pop culture in their heydays, but I guess this was several decades after their deaths, so they were no longer popular culture. The Elvis Stamp in 1993 was a huge moment for American stamps, but the lead up to it was surprisingly contentious. His fans had been pushing for a stamp since he became eligible in 1987, 10 years after his death, but others felt like stamps were for presidents and American heroes, not for musicians, and definitely not for rock and roll musicians. It did end up becoming the most collected stamp in US history, but from a pop culture standpoint, it was still Elvis Presley. Maybe he was a big deal to baby boomers who were already into stamps, but I was in elementary school in 1993 and he was not someone me and my friends cared about at all. I still don't. But in 1996, me and my friends did care about Space Jam. If somehow you're not familiar with it, it was a movie starring Michael Jordan at the peak of his celebrity and featuring Warner Brothers cartoon characters, notably Bugs Bunny. Now, there were reports that the Postal Service had had talks with Disney to put some of their characters on stamps, but apparently Disney wanted royalties, which is a setup they had had with some other countries' stamps. This is something the Postal Service wouldn't agree to. Warner Brothers, on the other hand, approached the Postal Service with a deal to license Bugs Bunny on a stamp for free, but to take a 65-35 cut on any merchandise that was put out promoting the stamp. The deal rankled some parts of the stamp collecting community. Some people had the same concerns as they did with Elvis, that Bugs Bunny wasn't worthy of being on a stamp, but other people were worried about the crass commercialism of the deal. Gary Fleming, a stamp shop owner in Maryland, was quoted in the Baltimore Sun as saying, "I would love to be able to produce something and put it in post offices and have them sell it for me. Is the US Postal Service going to be a gift shop for Warner Brothers?" He had a point. Under the Looney Tunes stamp collection brand, they would sell ties, hats, earrings, pins, mouse pads, mugs, pens, even pewter trinket boxes. They were using the USPS brand to benefit Warner Brothers. So yeah, the Postal Service was all in on the Bugs Bunny stamp. They even had an unveiling ceremony for the stamp art in October of 1996, a full 7 months before the stamp was due to be released. Coincidentally, this was also during the height of the promotional campaign for Space Jam, which was due to be released 3 weeks later. Again, not a great look. But the hype would pay off. 265 million of the stamps were printed for the May 1997 release, and within a month, the Postmaster General had ordered another 100 million be printed to keep up with demand. It was the most collected stamp of 1997, with numbers on par with the boomer-friendly Marilyn Monroe stamp that had come out a couple years earlier. The question was, could they keep kids interested in stamps? There would be another 4 Looney Tunes stamps, one each year through 2001, but the Postal Service had even more plans for Bugs back in 1996. In September of that year, they launched the Stampers program, a sort of stamp collecting promotional club, with Bugs Bunny serving as the official ambassador. The program was free to join, and members would regularly receive things like magazines and posters in the mail promoting stamps. By April 1998, the Postal Service had reported that 1.7 million people had signed up. Part of the program was the introduction of these, Stampers Saver cards. These were a bit like baseball cards, but instead of celebrating athletes, they celebrated stamps. I have a few different sets here, both out of the packaging and still in the packaging. At the largest end, there would be 20 cards per pack. This would be for sets of stamps that had 20 unique designs, like Classic Collection Civil War, which I actually mentioned in another video. At the small end, there would be 4 cards. This was either for sets with 4 unique designs, or if a set just had 1 unique design, they didn't give you a pack with just 1 lonely card. They gave you 4 different copies with 4 different designs. Looking at the packaged versions, you can see that Bugs Bunny appears on all of these. Like I said, the Stampers program mascot was Bugs Bunny. There are a few different form factors here. For the smaller sets, the difference between these two seem to be whether or not the stamps come in a 2x2 block or a kind of 1x4 strip here. The larger sets, like the Classic Collection stamps, or in this case, the Celebrate the Century packs, came in this larger design. The Celebrate the Century packs are actually sort of special. If you read through the Stampers magazines, they really had a focus on getting kids to vote for like what are their favorite designs from each of these sets. In terms of what's inside, most of these have just the cards and the stamps. There are a few that had some additional materials. So Space Discovery is a good example of kind of the deluxe version of these packages. I believe I have the stamps in here. So this is what this Space Discovery strip looked like. A full sheet would have more stamps than this. So 5 unique designs. There was a cover card and then 5 stamps, and you can match your stamp design to the card. Again, this is what would normally come with any of the sets, but being a special one, this also came with a nice poster that you could hang on your wall about your mission to save the solar system, and this actually came with some stickers as well. In terms of what the actual cards looked like, I think you can classify a lot of them as being very 90s, although the designs varied based on what the stamp set was about. Each one had a space for you to place your stamp on the front, and then had more information on the back. There were also packs of 10 blank cards for $1, so that you could use stamps that didn't have their own card releases. What's interesting is that each pack comes with a little envelope full of stamp mounts, and the instructions, and actually the cards themselves, urge you to use them to attach your stamps to your cards. Now that's a great way to teach proper stamp collecting practice, but I do have to wonder how many kids just put their stamps directly onto their cards. I know that when I got my first stamp yearbook for Christmas back when I was 7 years old, my first instinct was to lick and attach the stamps directly into the book until my dad stopped me and taught me the proper practice. In any case, it's actually really hard to find any information about Saver cards online, like just getting a checklist for all of the releases. I was able to get old copies of the Stampers magazines off eBay and the order forms they included inside, so I know that they released 453 cards across 57 packs through the end of 1999, not counting the blank pack. These cover a lot of the stamps that were released from late 1995, but they didn't include everything. They didn't make a pack for the Pioneers of Communication, for instance, but they did make one for the Benjamin O. Davis stamp from the Black Heritage series. I'm trying to imagine a kid choosing between the World of Dinosaurs pack and the Georgia O'Keeffe pack, but they're both here. It can also be tough to tell when the Stampers program ended. I think the magazine ended in late 1999, and the last mention you can find in press releases or postal bulletins is 2000 in relation to the World Stamp Expo in Anaheim. The Postal Service ran a contest for kids to send in their drawings of their vision of the 21st century, and 4 designs were turned into actual stamps released at the expo, a set called Stampin' the Future. The last Saver cards were released around the same time, in mid-2000, but I'm not actually sure exactly how many were issued. The only ones I've seen were the last couple of Celebrate the Century packs and the Roadrunner and Coyote Looney Tunes stamp, both of which were probably planned pretty far in advance. And interestingly, they both look like this. There's no Bugs Bunny branding here and actually no stamps inside, which is probably a good sign that this program was wrapping up. Together with the stamps that came before, this brings a total to 489 cards across 60 packs. Unfortunately, the Stampers program and the Saver cards didn't seem to spark a trend of new stamp collectors. As one illustration, the Boy Scouts of America have offered a stamp collecting merit badge since 1931, But in 2019, fewer than 1,000 scouts earned it, making it the second least popular badge, only to bugling. The secret to making stamps popular is probably not to jump on some other collectible craze. On an unrelated note, let me show off my Postal Service licensed non-fungible tokens. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out some of the others on the channel. One mystery that came up making this video is that the 1997 Stampers poster that previewed some of the upcoming Saver cards had this stamp featured, what looks to be a hand-drawn design called Stamp Man. I couldn't find anything about it in other Stampers material or in any stamp publication, so if you know what this is, please leave a comment. Thanks.